Local people, important issues. CBS 10 WILM's weekly focus on the Lower Cape Fear region. This is Byline Wilmington with your host, Don Ansell.
Welcome and good morning. Well, in the midst of some alarming unemployment numbers and growing revenue shortfalls, on January 28th, the North Carolina legislature will convene for its first session of 2009. Today, we're looking at the state of the state along with a preview of the new legislative session. Our guest is Representative Carolyn Justice, a three-term member of the North Carolina State House who represents parts of New Hanover and Pender counties. Thank you for joining us, Representative Justice.
It's always my pleasure.
So nice to see you. How different will the legislative environment be now as opposed to when you left Raleigh in July?
Well, of course, the world has changed, not just North Carolina. The world has changed since we left. We'll be going back to some problems we knew we had when the session ended, but boy, they will have quadrupled by the time we get back. We're looking at anywhere from a $2 to a $3 billion deficit. However,
we're talking revenue shortfall.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remind folks that the very first year I served, that was now 6 years ago, the state faced a $2 billion shortfall. And so this has happened before. What's going to be more difficult this time is that the economy nationwide is in trouble, and so that amplifies everything.
Well, all right, $2 to $3 billion shortfall. That's money that's coming in to pay for what we're spending. Right. What do you think the approach should be for dealing with that?
Well, first of all, I think Governor Easley, before he went out of office, and now our brand new governor, Bev Perdue, are both addressing it. And just in the last couple of days, there's been announcements of plans they're making to cut back. Easley did a major cutback on all divisions and all departments for this current year's budget.
He cut the budget across the board.
That's right.
For departments.
In the current years, because our budget year doesn't end until July 1, so he was dealing with what are we going to do in this year where the budget already exists and trying to come in to a balanced budget by July 1. Then there is the big issue of what kind of budget to do next year, because who will know what the revenues will be when people are out of jobs and people are not buying as much, sales tax goes down. You might not be paying your state tax, so revenue to the state's going down in many ways, and so the dollars available are drastically reduced, not only for that new year, but in this very year right here.
The budget that the state's working under now calls for a record $850 million debt amount.
Right.
And this was more than both the House or the Senate recommended in their version of the budgets. Right. The first thing I want to know is, how does something like that happen? The House has a version, the Senate has a version. Neither of them went to the figure of $850. How does that happen? Well,
here's how the budget's done. Actually, the governor of North Carolina writes the budget. They say, then she sends, we have to change our vernacular now. Right. She will send it over to the General Assembly. In one session, it comes to the House first, and in the next session, it comes to the Senate first. And so let's say it comes to the House. The House doesn't write a budget. The House takes the governor's budget and ups and downs things in the governor's budget and said, oh, no, we don't want to do that, Governor. Let's reduce this and add this. Then that budget is voted on by the House and sent to the Senate. The Senate does exactly the same thing, and each of these processes takes a month or so to do. Then, until the two budgets are identical, you don't have a budget. So what's called conferees are appointed. 12 people from the House, 12 people from the Senate.
It's a committee that come together to try to
and they
marry
confer,
the two budgets.
They confer and sit down and work on the budget. And then that's where this new stuff comes out, and then we're all surprised. And we get it maybe 12 hours before we're going to vote on it.
How much more difficult will it be to deal with the economic issues, the revenue shortfall that the state's facing because of that $850 million debt figure? That's how much money the state has to borrow to balance the budget.
Exactly right. It will be, as I said, quadruple the situation. We say every year, oh, we're going to have to get serious about cuts. We're going to have to get serious about cuts. This year, we really are going to have to get serious about cuts. So this is not just a how are we going to raise the revenue to pay this debt. I'm hoping it's how are we going to cut to find the money without cutting the very vital programs that are necessary to the state of North Carolina. people are still moving to North Carolina. That hasn't stopped in this economic downturn, and could actually increase with people leaving areas where, in urban areas where there's greater job loss than in North Carolina. And so they're bringing their children with them. So when school starts the fall of 2009, there will be more students in line than there were in the fall of 2008. So not only do you have to fund what you funded last year, you got to give some more money to schools because that number is growing.
Well, the good news is people are still moving to North Carolina. The bad news is the burgeoning unemployment picture in North Carolina. What action would you like to see the legislature take to deal with the jobs issue?
Well, here's what I think, and I don't think I'm alone in this. I think if we were ever going to take a year to dismantle a budget and start over, this is the year. I think if we're ever going to be serious about zero-based budgeting, and that means take every department back to zero and start building it up again, and see that over the years what has compounded itself that doesn't even need to be there, what programs are duplicating themselves.
You're talking about moving forward this coming July.
That's exactly right, in the new budget year.
Do you think there is a sentiment in the two houses to do that?
I think there is.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Don, something that I don't hear a lot about on the news, and I wish we could get more coverage. The year before last, the General Assembly started a whole new division in the General Assembly. Those are frightening words. And it's called program evaluation. And we picked 10 programs to say, look at each of these programs, tell us if they're efficient, if they're necessary, if they're costing people money, that if we even need the program. That committee has started reporting out, and it's fascinating. And if you go online to ncleg.net, which is the website for the General Assembly, look down the right-hand side for reports from program evaluation. You will see the ones they've already reported out. They've reported out on the ABC system and major problems. They've reported out on vehicle inspection, major problems. They've reported out on several programs that they've come up with some ways to save a lot of money and restructure those programs. That's a good beginning for where we need to move with the entire budget.
We're going to talk more about the budget process, and some reports that North Carolina could be running out of money for its unemployment benefits. We'll be right back with Representative Carolyn Justice. Stay with us.